What's up, everybody? Welcome to a What You Think. This is going to be for the Eldar because I figured, hey, they got their codex. Why not do a What You Think on Eldar? I don't think I've done the Eldar one yet, so that's good. I don't. Like I said, I don't think I did, but yeah, What You Think Eldar? Their codex has come up recently, so let's talk about them. Not looking into specific rules, war gear, special characters, or the like. Just overall, what you think is just about the faction overall. So share your thoughts in the comment section below. So Eldar, an ancient race, very long-living race, responsible for a myriad of disasters, including the downfall of their own race, given over to the debauchery and opulence, and basically the abuse of their psyker might and advanced tech that they do have. They're not the most advanced technologically out there. That would be the Necrons, but their technology in culmination with their psyker arts led them to have a very easy lifestyle if they chose it, and they really abused that. And all that psychic feedback led to the birth of Slaanesh and the downfall of the Eldar race. In fact, the Eye of Terra is also their doing by accident, you could say. And that gobbled up many an Eldar world and craft worlds that couldn't get out of there in time. So you have quite the my bad situation there with the Eldar. Um, they really do have a long lifespan. I don't really know how long they live, right? I mean, how would I know? But I do know that Eldrad, for example, is extremely old. Um, was extremely old. I don't know if he's still dead or alive. I forget. Eldrad's fluff always kind of confused me in the later editions. But he was around during the Great Crusade time period. He actually had a conversation with Fulgrim. It was too late to keep him from falling to chaos, but that's kind of what the conversation was about. But that was Eldrad, the same Eldrad that you used as a special character and was around up into the 13th Black Crusade. So they can have a truly long lifespan. And I know Eldrad was pushing it. I think he was becoming crystalline or something. I forget the specifics, but the point is, pretty long life. So the Eldar, because of that, are very specialized as a force. And I find that interesting because they're also very intelligent, right? So the fire dragons or the warp spiders or the swooping hawks and the like, they know that they are training to be super specialized in a particular aspect of war, hence aspect warriors, and therefore being at a disadvantage outside of their special theater of war. They know this, but they also know that their commanders know this, and their farseers and their warlocks know this. So they're going to be put in pristine positions and perfect positions for their strength in warfare to really be capitalized on. So while they do specialize, which is very risky, having specialized forces because you need multiple specialized forces together to then overcome the enemy threat effectively. They have the training to really be honed into a razor's edge in that particular theater of warfare. And then when you combine several of those forces together, you get a truly powerful force in a small package. They also have their warlocks and their guardians. The guardians are the basic civilianship, if you will, turned militia to fight when necessary. And their farseers, using psychic scrying and all that to do things, is a pretty cool setup for a force. They're interesting. They have different aspect warriors. They have their own kind of tech priests, if you will, in the form of the Bone Singers. Bone Singers kind of construct things with the Wraith Bone, which is very interesting. And I really like the Bone Singers. They look cool. The concept about them is pretty cool. Them and the Warp Spiders are probably my two favorite things from the Eldar, outside of Wraith Lords and Wraith Constructs, which are also really cool. So you get kind of a smattering, if you will, of tropes in an Eldar force. You can have super specialized infantry. You can have grav tanks that can punch pretty hard. You can have warwalkers that kind of give support as well. You can have a citizen militia in the form of guardians. You can also have the equivalent of Eldar undead in the form of Wraith Guard and Wraith Lords and Wraith Knights. So, pretty interesting. I really do like the whole Wraith Guard and Wraith Lord setup. If I ever were to get into Eldar, that would be the way I would go probably. But I just can't bring myself to collect Eldar. One of the reasons is they're like Skittles. They have all the colors of the rainbow going on in an Eldar force typically. You have your aspect warriors, each of which have their own color scheme, regardless of what craft world they're from. You have your craft world specific colors as well. And yeah, that together plus vehicles plus your wraith constructs having the wraith bone and then being colorized for your craft world, and having the aspect warriors, maybe their cloth that they're wearing be the colors of the craft world that they're from. It just leads to a very unsynchronized color scheme setup. And for me, that doesn't work too well. But hey, if you like Skittles, there you go. So the Eldar are an interesting force. At the end of the day, I think they're pretty cool. And even though it's kind of taboo, the best way you can describe them to a new player to 40k who knows fantasy is elves in space. Now, don't get crazy on me, Eldar fans. They're the Eldar or the Eldari or whatever as GW wants to call them this week. They got pointy ears. They're very magically gifted in terms of psykerly gifts, because psykers are the magic stuff of 40k. They live for a ridiculously long time. They can be specialized to the nth degree in a particular way of doing things, and they got the arrogance to boot. So it's a good way to describe it to somebody who knows a fantasy genre. If you know fantasy, any fantasy, then describing to that person elves in space is a good way to get started knowing what the Eldar are like. It works out. I know, it's almost heresy in Eldar players' eyes to say that, but it's close. And it works. The Eldar are also very underhanded. I mean, while Eldar on the surface seem willing to work with lesser species as they view them to get a goal done, it's never with the positive outcome being in the lesser species' favor or even in the Eldar thought process for them. They will work with other species, lesser though they may be, primitive though they are, to further the Eldar goal. And usually it's to put the other force in a position to take the most damage and do the really risky stuff that the Eldar don't want to risk their lives for. The Eldar are kind of a dying race because of their arrogance and their opulence in the past, in the birth of Slaanesh. They are dying off more so than they are repopulating. And anything they can do to save an Eldar life in their eyes are worth it. They're very like the Imperium in that regard, to a certain degree. Although the Imperium spends its own blood as currency, but the Imperium is very xenophobic, very human-centric. The Eldar are very Eldar-centric. They're not so much xenophobic. They will make use of lesser species for their own goals. And certain conflicts happen solely because the Eldar set it up to happen that way, so it bypasses an Eldar world or an Eldar craft world or an Eldar wreck somewhere that they're trying to salvage and get running again, or get stuff out of. They'll do whatever it takes to divert attention and disaster from that. The whole Third War of Armageddon is a direct example of that. That was done to protect the craft world from being attacked by the orcs. And you can't blame them. They're a dying species. Anything they can do to avert disaster and a crisis on them is good for their numbers. But it does lead to some pretty gigantic battles in the galaxy. And while they do use and misdirect and have deception going on, when there is a truly deep, dangerous, demonic threat, for example, 13 Black Crusade style or what have you, they will be a bit more open to working almost straight up as Eldar can work with other species to stop it. With the exception of Necrons. The Eldar hate Necrons basically just as much as they hate Slaanesh. You could say they had a big war with them back in the day. It didn't go well for either side. They're both pretty bitter about it. So that's kind of my take, my view, my thoughts on the Eldar. Um, Kind of like Space Elves, they have really specialized forces. Where the Astra Militarum has regiments to do specialized things, but nobody in there is super specialized to do anything. You know, they have like rifle regiments and tank regiments and the like. That's what the Aspect Warriors are like, only they are Aspect Warrior infantry units trained to a razor's edge as close to perfection as possible to master a particular way of war. It's like a much smaller, condensed version of how regiments are handled in the Astra Militarum, and a much more effective use of each individual soldier of the Eldar because they live longer, have much longer training, and better equipment and stuff like that. Anyways, that's my random thoughts on the Eldar from what I think about them. What do you think about them? Do you like them? Do you dislike them? Do you play them? What are your forces you use? Like, are you a particular aspect that you like a lot, or a particular craft role you like the color scheme of? I like Alton Sar's kind of color scheme and story as a craft world. And when it comes to uh, Eldar forces, I really like Bone Swingers, like I mentioned, I believe, and I think I also mentioned this already, but I like Bone Swingers and Wart Spiders a lot, as well as the whole Wraith Bone construct stuff. Anyways, that's it. Thanks very much for sticking through this. Kind of went all over the place there. Until the next one, take it easy.